All right, welcome back to the 19th edition of Before the Battle. I am Nick Baldwin, and as always, I'm joined by Daniel Levy and Go Paulo. And this guy came on a few months back. I know in August he came on. Then he disappeared for a little bit, but Jeremy Brand is back as well. First off, Daniel, how's it going?
It's going amazing. I mean, Conor McGregor knocked out the great Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. You know, the history of the sport has been changed, and now I'm excited to talk UFC Orlando with my boys.
All right, Paulo, what's up?
What's up, Paula?
Are you gonna say something? All right, Jeremy, how's it going?
Pretty good. I guess I'm the man of mystery. I disappear for a little bit. I come back. I'm like David friggin' Blaine.
That's
No
right.
kidding. Now, like Daniel mentioned, Conor McGregor is your new UFC featherweight undisputed champion with a 13-second knockout over the only featherweight champion in UFC history we have ever known, Jose Aldo. Magnificent performance. Jeremy, I'll kind of start with you. Do you think if the fight went on longer, maybe went to distance, maybe went 3 rounds, whatever, do you think we would have seen a different fight, or would Conor McGregor have won anyways?
Nope. I think it would have ended up exactly the same. I think Conor would have won. I think he was the man that night. I actually think he'd be the man any other night as well. And you know this. I was picking Jose Aldo the entire time. Other than last week when I had Andrew McGann from Severe MMA on my show, and he sort of swayed my judgment a little bit, I was picking Jose Aldo nonstop. I didn't think he was going to lose this fight at all, and Conor proved me wrong on Saturday night, dude. This guy, without a doubt, is the most confident guy inside the UFC, and he's going to continue to be that. I don't see him being dethroned for some time. In fact, I think we could see him be a two-division champion.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely moving up to lightweight is a big possibility, especially depending on what happens this weekend, which we'll get to later. But Daniel, anything else to add on that? Would it have gone the same way? And just any other thoughts on this past weekend's UFC cards? 3 in a row. It's the first time ever. We had Rose Namajunas defeating Paige Van Zandt in the first main event. Then we had Frankie Edgar knocking out Chad Mendes. So it was a fantastic weekend for the UFC.
It was absolutely a fantastic weekend, and asking me if it would have gone any differently is like asking me, what would happen with Ronda and Holly if she didn't land that head kick. I mean, he landed the punch. It is what it is, and had he not landed it in 13 seconds, he would have landed it later in the fight. The thing that I'm really happy about is that now people's eyes are being opened. You know, the thing that people like myself and other people have been trying to say for a long time, that McGregor is that next generation fighter. Now people are finally starting to see it, and that makes me so happy because he's going to take this sport to the next level, not just what he does inside the octagon, but outside the octagon as well. I mean, what other fighters are you seeing on Jimmy Fallon on Fight Week? Jimmy Kimmel, I mean, excuse me. And, just everything he's doing, he's revolutionizing the sport, and I don't foresee him losing anytime soon.
I agree, and Paulo, on one fight we probably aren't talking about enough. Ultimately, probably fight of the weekend. Tony Ferguson submitting Edson Barboza in what was a hell of a fight. Do you see Tony Ferguson making a title run in the near future?
Of course, absolutely. The fan in me really wants to see Tony Ferguson fight for a title. I mean, he's the most exciting fighter this year. I mean, like how many fights did they have this year? Like 4 or 3, and all of them were performance of the night. See, that's exactly the type of fighter Tony Ferguson is, and he just keeps getting better. I see him fighting for the title. I don't think there's a lot of guys in front of him right now.
Absolutely, man. Tony, dude, the thing that Tony did in that Edson fight was just insane. I mean, the amount of damage he took and then to choke him out with that Darce choke, it was quite impressive.
Yeah, Jeremy, what do you think about Ferguson Barboza? Ultimately, if Conor McGregor stays at featherweight, I honestly would want Tony Ferguson fighting the winner of RDA Cerrone. Obviously, that'll be the lightweight champion.
I think it was a pretty good fight. Obviously it won Tony Ferguson some money. I do, however, think that up kick sort of changed the pace of the fight just a little bit. That illegal up kick.
Well,
All right,
can I
fair enough.
comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
That illegal up kick was karma for him spinning kicking Paul Felder in the first fight.
In the
Yeah. Okay.
Oh man, yeah, that was the worst nut shot ever. Oh my god. Just the fact that Paul Felder could continue after that, he deserved the performance in the night for that.
Yeah.
No kidding. And Ryan Jimmo when he fought his opponent, I don't remember his name, but that was nasty as well.
And poor Ryan Jimmo, he got cut because of that.
No kidding. Like Paul Felder doesn't get cut after a nut shot. What's up with that?
I think it was a little bit more than just.
Just
What
about-
happened
Maybe a
inside
little bit.
the
Maybe a little bit. All right. 3-card weekend in the books, and now we have another fantastic card on Big Fox. Rafael dos Anjos, the lightweight champion, defending UFC gold for the first time against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Before we get to that, I want to start on the preliminary card with Nick Lentz moving up to lightweight against Danny Castillo. Daniel, who do you like in this matchup?
This is about as close to a pick'em as you can get. I mean, both of these guys are your prototypical grinders, and if you had to pinpoint, weaknesses and strengths in their game, with Castillo, I'd say that offensively striking is actually really good. He can knock you out, and in his last fight against Jim Miller, he was throwing some nice head kicks, but defensively striking, that's where he lacks. He's been knocked out more than once, and we all know that Shin never recovers. His wrestling isn't half bad either, and with Nick Lentz, sometimes he goes out there and tries to grind, and sometimes he goes out there and tries to stand and bang and put on a fight of the night. So it just depends who's going to show up on fight night, and honestly, I don't have a pick here. I'm on the fence.
Paulo, are you going with Castillo or Nick Lentz?
It's tough to say, but I'm going to go with Castillo here, but that's not a confident pick at all. I think what's going to happen here is the wrestling's going to cancel each other out, and they're going to stand and trade. And the thing is, if that happens, I'm going to be really worried for Castillo, because like Daniel said, he's been getting knocked out and hurt a couple of times. So, you never want to see fighters get knocked out repeatedly and have to be told to retire. So, I don't know. I want Castillo to win, so I'm going to pick Castillo to win.
Nice. I like your reasoning there. Jeremy, are you going with Danny Castillo or Nick Lentz in this lightweight matchup?
Yeah, I'm going with Danny Castillo as well. It is a toss-up, like Daniel said. I think that it's a tough one for either guy. Nick Lentz has a little bit more oomph in the tank, but I think Castillo has that mental game, and he's going to get her done.
Yeah, I usually go with the Team Alpha Male Fighters, but I gotta go with the Nick here, obviously, Nick Lentz, to get the job done. It's probably going to be a close decision, like you guys all pointed out. It really is a toss-up. It's a pick-em fight. Not confident in my pick in Nick Lentz. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Castillo gets, I want to say, the slight upset, but yeah, I kind of just look at the fact that I think Castillo is declining a fair bit more than Lentz is, and Lentz is still top 10, maybe top 15 at worst, but I got to go with Nick Lentz here. I think he's just a bit better physically, but like Jeremy pointed out, Danny Castillo, he does have that mental edge, so you never know what happens, especially in this close of a fight. All right, moving on. One fight I'm really looking forward to: Josh Salmon taking on Tamden McCrory in a middleweight matchup. Jeremy, I'll start with you. Are you going with Salmon here or the Barn Cat?
I got to go with Tamden McCrory, man. This guy is the real deal. Took some time off, was never actually retired. You spoke to him yourself there, Nick, without even knowing who the guy was. And he got stuff done in Bellator. He proved that he really does deserve to be back inside the octagon. Josh Salmon has gotten the job done when he's been inside the octagon. I don't necessarily think he should have gotten the job done in every one of those outings. I think Tamden McCrory just has the skill set to be able to beat this guy everywhere. So I'm taking Tamden McCrory to win this fight.
All right, interesting pick. Daniel, are you going with the Barn Cat to get the job done in his return to the octagon, or do you think the slight favorite here, Josh Salmon, will get the victory?
I like the Barn Cat a lot, but he's kind of a mystery to me. Like, I don't know what to expect from him because obviously you mentioned the fact that he was in the UFC for a while. He's putting on some good performances, but then he takes 4 to 5 years off, and I don't know if he was going back to school or if he was, moving to the jungle to go train at some dojo. Whatever he was doing, he comes back and, he knocks out Brendan Ward in 20 seconds, and then has another victory under a minute. And here's the thing, though. We all know Brendan Ward's really good. My friend Tex Johnson submitted him in about 16 seconds. But the thing with Brendan Ward is that he's a welterweight, and Josh Saman is a big middleweight. This guy's a physical specimen, and, he can knock you out. He can submit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and the thing I like most about him is that he's overcome adversity, not just inside the octagon, but outside the octagon. We all know what happened to his ex-girlfriend, and the fact that he came back so strong after that, it's hard to pick against a guy like that. So for, emotional reasons, I'm going to pick Josh Saman to win this fight.
All right, Paulo, are you going with John Salmon here, the slight favorite, or do you think Cameron McCrory will be successful in his return to the UFC?
What happened, Paula? Oh, man.
Paulo,
I guess
Let's just toss a coin for him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a pretty close fight, so I don't think I have a loony on hand. I know Daniel doesn't because he's American, but Canadians outnumber on Before the Battle, obviously. But Paulo, his sound, I don't know if it's not working, so I'll move on to my pick. And this is a weird fight for me because I'm kind of biased towards both guys here. I work with Salmon over at Bloody Elbow, and I had one of my best interviews ever with Tamden McCrory. I really don't want either to lose for those reasons. And the thing with Tamden is I'm not going to straight up say, oh yeah, Salmon will win, or Tamden McCrory will win, simply because McCrory, he hasn't fought a UFC caliber fighter since 2009, and that was John Howard, who just got knocked out in the second round. A very cool guy, but he's definitely on his way out. Yes, he picked up 2 first-round stoppages in Bellator, but that is Bellator. That's not the UFC. I really have no idea where Tamden is at. He looked good in Bellator, but like I said, it's different when you fight UFC caliber fighters, and Josh Salmon is on his way up. He's a very good fighter. He's improving. So I'm not going to make a pick, but I think it's going to be a good fight, and it's going to be a close fight. Well, Paulo, you're here now. Hopefully your mic doesn't crap out again. Are you going with Salmon or Tamden McCrory?
I'm going to go with Salmon. I'm going to keep it brief. Like Daniel said, it's hard to pick a guy against a guy who's overcome so much diversity. But McCrory took time off because he said he was taking too much time away from his family. So you know that he's coming back because his heart's in the right place. He's not coming back because he needs the money or anything like that. He just wants to compete again. So, but yeah, McCrory's too much of an enigma now. So I'm going to pick Salmon.
All right. Oh, this is an interesting matchup. I'm not even going to, I'll try to pronounce Sarah Kaufman's opponent. Newcomer Valentina Shevchenko taking on Sarah Kaufman.
Shevchenko.
There we go. But yeah, interesting women's bantamweight matchup. Was supposed to be Germaine Durandamy, but of course she fell out of the matchup due to injury. The Canadian looking to get back into the winning column against the Bullet. Jeremy, are you going with the Canadian or the newcomer?
Jeremy's not here anymore, so I'll answer for him.
All right, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel. This is a wild Before the Battle. Okay, go ahead, Daniel.
I'm going to go with Shevchenko here just because, not that I've, seen all her fights or anything like that, but what I have seen is that Sarah Kaufman, she'll look for the door, and I always pick against fighters that look for the door. But one thing I like about Sarah Kaufman outside the octagon is that she's a drummer. So if she ever wants drum lessons and she's watching this, hit me up, Sarah.
All right, Jeremy, you're here now. I asked you while looking at the UFC.com site. Of course, you left before I actually asked you. But are you going with Kaufman or Valentina Shevchenko?
I think this is a really tough fight for Sarah Kaufman. This chick is like a K1 champ. She's got some crazy striking, but I cannot pick against the Canadian here. Sarah Kaufman is getting my pick just because she's Canadian.
Paulo, are you going with the Canadian? And you better because you're Canadian, but newcomer definitely has a chance.
Oh yeah, Shevchenko definitely has a chance. As Jeremy said, she's a former K1 fighter, and the thing about Sarah Kaufman is I think her striking's a little bit overrated. I know that's her main bread and butter, but come on, man. She was on paper she was a much better fighter than Leslie Smith, and she struggled against Leslie Smith. Leslie Smith was like right totally there in her in a fight and almost even knocked her out. So if this wasn't a short notice fight, I would definitely pick Shevchenko, but I'm picking Kaufman here. But this is dog or pass from a betting perspective.
Yeah, that's a kind of interesting point. I want to lean Kaufman, but I've heard nothing but good things about Valentina Shevchenko. But Apollo did bring up a good point by saying if since this is short notice, he's going with the Canadian. I'll take his word on that. I'll go with the Canadian simply because the bullet is coming in on short notice. If this was if she had a full 2 months to train, it could have been a different fight. But in this situation, I'm gonna go with the Canadian, mostly because I'm Canadian. CB Galloway, Nate Marquardt, Paulo, who do you like in this kind of interesting middleweight matchup between two guys that really just are kind of declining, to say the least?
Yeah, I'm really not looking forward to this fight. Much respect to CB Galloway and Nate Marquardt. Those guys have done their due. They're UFC veterans. But the fact that CB Galloway is like almost a 4-1 favorite, man, that's dangerous right there. I don't know anyone wants to lay 4-1 juice in CB Galloway, even if it's against the ghost of Nate Marquardt. But you know what? I'm going to go with CB Galloway here. Neither of their chins are any good, but I would say that Nate Marquardt's chin is a lot worse than Galloway, so Galloway by knockout at some point.
Daniel, are you going with Nate the Great here or CB Galloway?
I will never pick Nate Not So Great Marquardt in a fight in 2000. And, I mean, he's just going to lose here inside the distance. It is what it is, you know. He's had a great career. At one point, he was one of the best middleweights in the world. But this sport is very unforgiving, and when the game passes you by, you know, bad stuff starts happening. He's going to get finished here. It is what it is.
Jeremy, are you going to go with the Galloway like the other two, or are you going with the underdog here, Nate the Great Marquardt?
Yeah, Daniel hit the nail on the head right there, man, that the sport has passed Nate Marquardt by. He has probably nothing left in here. I do see this one being ended within the distance. CB Galloway will likely take him down, beat him up with some ground and pound, or he might even land a big punch on the feet. Who knows? But CB Galloway is going to get this one done because Nate Marquardt's chin is like friggin' glass.
Yeah, I'm definitely going with CB Galloway here. I'm not confident he finishes Nate the Great, but yeah, Marquardt probably shouldn't be fighting. He is declining very fast. Not to say that Galloway is an upcoming star by any means, but he definitely has more in the gas tank for sure. And I like the Doberman here for sure, but I'll go with a decision. I don't think he will be able to stop Nate Marquardt. All right, moving on. The headlining prelim fight on Fox Sports 1. In my opinion, this fight should be on the main card. Charles Oliveira welcomes Miles Jury to the featherweight division. Jeremy, are you going with Do Bronx or Fury?
Nope, I'm not going with that bad nickname, man. I think we chatted about him one time I was on the show before. The worst nickname in mixed martial arts. I got to go with Miles Jury. I'm a huge fan of this guy. I think he's got some great footwork. When he was working with Alliance there, he had the Dominic Cruz a la action footwork going on inside the octagon. He's going to be able to pick his shots. He's going to be able to stay away from the power of Oliveira, and he's just going to pick him apart. I think he's going to win a decision.
Paulo, are you going with Oliveira or Jury?
This is a really tough fight. I could see this fight either staying on its feet, and if that's going to happen, I think Miles Jury is going to win because he's the better striker. Jeremy noted to his footwork, and he's just getting better over time. And I know Daniel's going to say something about Oliveira, so I'm not going to steal his bit about Charles Oliveira, but if this fight goes underground, I could see it going either way with a lot of scrambles and transitions, and maybe Do Bronx gets the submission. But no, I'm going to go with Jury here. I think he's better all around.
Daniel, are you going with Do or Do Bronx, whatever the hell that guy's nickname is, or Miles Jury to get the job done?
Do or don't Bronx.
Well, first of all, Paula, why don't you go ahead and say what I was going to say? Just start it off so I can get a nice little lead in.
Charles Oliveira doesn't finish fights because he quits.
Well, when he wins, he finishes. His jiu-jitsu is nasty. The thing with him is that, I mean, if he's not dominating you, if he's not tapping you out with calf slicers and all these unorthodox moves, he'll look for the door for sure. I mean, that fight with Max Holloway, torn esophagus, yeah, that's what he says. Then a week later on UFC Tonight, it comes out, he's perfectly fine. And then a week after that, he gets booked for another fight. So, I mean, who's got the torn esophagus, you know what I'm saying? And when you talk about Miles Jury, he's dropping to 145 pounds. And I know in his last fight against Cerrone, it didn't go his way, but I was actually, impressed with the fact that he made Cerrone kind of fight his fight. It's not like Cerrone went out there and just whooped him. They both didn't have a scratch on their face after the fight. People only remember those kicks at the end of the fight, that those little FU kicks that he did when Jury was on his butt. But if you actually watch the duration of the fight, they're both point fighting, and that's because Jury was able to make it into a point fight. But Cerrone won that, and now he's dropping to 45, so we'll see what happens. If he tries to play with fire on the ground, he could get burnt, he could get tapped out, but if he's smart about how he handles this, he could make Oliveira quit. So I'm going to lean towards Jury, but we'll have to see if he's got good fight IQ or not.
This is a close matchup, but I'm gonna lean with I gotta say it, but I'm gonna lean with Do Bronx here. I'm not too confident in Jury moving down to featherweight. I think you never know with the IV ban. You have to wait till the weigh-ins to be super sure and whatnot. But you'd have to assume the weight cut will be pretty tough for him. Like I mentioned, especially without IVs and whatnot, which I'm sure. If this fight was before October, I'm sure he'd be using IVs right away. But Charles Oliveira, this guy, I don't want to say underrated, but he wins fights that some people don't think he'll win. And I think the Brazilian will get this one. And I'll go by decision because Jury's tough. He's never been finished in his pro career. But then again, he's only lost once to the title challenger we'll talk about in a bit. But I'm going to go with the Brazilian here, Charles Oliveira, to get the job done by decision. All right, moving on. Randa Marcos, another Canadian against another newcomer who, again, I'm going to butcher her name, Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Daniel, are you going with Marcos or Karolina?
I am going with Randa Marcos. I'm going to go with the Canadian here. And, she seems like a really cool chick. She's got a good energy about her. I like her a lot, and if she's watching this, I see you, girl.
Jeremy, are you going with Karolina or the Canadian once again, Randa Marcos?
Yeah, I'm going with Randa Marcos. I'm excited to see her get back inside the octagon, do business. I don't really know much about this other chick, so I can't pick against Randa when I don't know who she's fighting, really.
Paula, what about you?
I'm gonna go with Randa here. Let's just but let's talk about Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I didn't even pronounce that well, but that's how you should say it. Apparently she has good takedown defense, but I watched some of her fights, and the chicks who are taking her, the girls who are taking her down don't have the same athleticism and wrestling background that Marcos has. So obviously it's easy to look like he's stuffing every takedown that they throw at her. The best girl she fought was like Mizuki Inoue, who's like, she can wrestle, but that's not really her strength. So I think Ronda's gonna bully her and probably win. The only thing about Ronda is sometimes she gets into tough positions, man. Like she was beating Aisling Daly fairly well, but then she got the second round. It was an entirely different story where Daly was putting it up on her. So it's gonna be a tough fight, but I'd like Marcos to pull it through here.
Yeah, in similar fight to the Kaufman fight, a Canadian who, I'll pick because she's Canadian, but I'm not I've heard nothing but good things about Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Again, I just butchered that even worse. But,
it's called KK. This is KK.
Yeah, KK, just like JJ. But yeah, I'll go with Randa just because I know who she is. I don't know who Karolina is, but I haven't heard anything but good things about her, so I'm not confident. I'm kind of just picking because I know who she. I don't know anything. It's undefeated for a reason. But Canadian bias once again, so maybe don't bet my pick. But I'll go with Random Marcos here. All right, Michael Johnson, Nate Diaz in a pivotal lightweight matchup. Jeremy, are you going with the Menace or Nate Diaz?
I'm going to go with Nate Diaz. I know it's out on a limb a little bit here. I can't go against those Stockton boys, man. I just can't. I'm not a huge Michael Johnson fan. I like what Diaz does on the feet. I like the way he pitter-patters guys. And if he is on his back, he throws up dangerous and nasty submissions as well. So I got to go with Diaz, man.
Interesting. Daniel, Nate Diaz or Michael the Menace Johnson?
Now, I know why Michael Johnson's favorite here. You know, obviously he's the number 4, number 5 guy in the world, and Nate Diaz, you know, hasn't looked the best. But when Nate Diaz is on his game, he's one of the toughest guys to beat, and he's the last guy you want to underestimate. And I think that Michael Johnson thinks, you know, he thinks he won that Benny Dariush fight, so he's kind of like, you know, who the hell is Nate Diaz? You know, I think he's underestimating him, and he's going to get choked out for the 7th time in his career.
All right, Paulo, Nate Diaz or Michael Johnson in this important lightweight matchup?
You know what? I'm getting a little bit nervous here because I was actually going to go Nate Diaz here. And, like, if all of us go Nate Diaz and everyone picks the underdog, we're jinxing it. So, Nick, you better pick Michael Johnson, Nick, and you better have a good argument. Don't just say you're picking Michael Johnson because we're all picking Nate Diaz. But, no, man, like, on the stand-up, Nate Diaz is the better fighter. And when it comes to the ground, does Michael Johnson want to go to the ground with Nate Diaz? He's probably going to get submitted. We know that Michael Johnson's been submitted a lot of times in his career, and that's probably his Achilles heel. So, and then there was actually a photo of Nate Diaz, and he was shredded as F, man. Like, he looks good to go. So if Nate, I mean, there's still time for him to fatten up and smoke all the dope he wants. But, you know, if Nate Diaz is like, you know, he's good to go, he's gonna win, man.
Yeah, I'll probably jinx it here in favor of you guys. I have to go with Michael Johnson. Because I think he's getting better each and every day, and I don't think Nate Diaz is getting better each and every day. Diaz has been out for a while, and we saw what happened yet again. Yes, that was to the current champ, but we saw what happened when he returned after a year-long layoff or whatever. He just got dominated by Rafael dos Anjos for 3 rounds. And I think he's probably going to get dominated here, but you guys pick better than I do, so chances are Nate Diaz will win this fight. But I'll go with the favorite here, the fairly large favorite with that, Michael Johnson, to get the dominant decision victory over Nate Diaz. All right, co-main event of the evening. This is a fight I've been waiting for literally for 3 years, and that is surprising because I am literally a kid. But Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem. Jeremy, are you going with Cigano here or the Ream?
Well, I'm going to swear we are a PG audience, but fuck no am I not going with Alistair Overeem, and that is because of you, Nick. I know how much you love this guy. There is no way I'm picking Alistair Overeem to beat Junior Dos Santos. Junior Dos Santos beats this guy in every aspect of the game. He's going to pick him apart. He's going to knock him out. Also, because Alistair Overeem's chin is just ridiculously bad, man. He's going to get pitter-pattered. He's going to get destroyed. I cannot wait to see Alistair Overeem hit the canvas, possibly retire, because that's what he needs to do.
Daniel, I'm not a fan of what Jeremy just said, but are you going with JGS here or the Ream?
This matchup is the best one-punch knockout artist in UFC heavyweight history versus the worst chin in UFC heavyweight history. You got a guy who has just highlight reels over Cain Velasquez, over Fabricio Werdum. You know, he's a guy that went in there with Shane Carwin in Carwin's prime and stuffed all his takedowns and then took him down twice in the 3rd round. Overeem has been knocked out 12 times in his pro career, and I don't even know how many times he's been knocked out in practice. We know the chin never recovers. Chin's not going to recover on Saturday night because he's going to eat either a left hook, a big overhand right, or an uppercut, and he's going to go unconscious badly.
Apollo, you're probably going JDS also, but please make it seem like Overeem has a chance.
You know what, Nick? It depends actually, because like apparently JDS fought Stipe Miocic injured, so he didn't look that good in that fight. But he looked sluggish, and he didn't really have that explosiveness that we're used to seeing from JDS. And if that version of him shows up against Overeem, I think Overeem has a chance. Get pitter patter and keep away from JDS and probably win a kind of lackluster decision. But no, man, I think if the JDS from old shows up, Overeem's gonna go to bed, man. Night.
I think a big thing in this fight is that JDS has actually changed up his camp. He's training with American Top
Yeah, that's a
Team
great point.
now. He's got a really good strength and conditioning coach down there. He's looking in great shape. He's not doing this Wim Hof stuff that Alistair Overeem is doing, sitting under submerged ice-cold water. Junior Dos Santos is actually taking this fight seriously, and he's picked up a big training camp amongst something that he's trying to do to get back up to the top of the division.
All right, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem. I hate
pick
saying
Reem.
this,
Pick
but
Reem, Nick. Pick him.
no, I gotta go with Dos Santos here.
Go with your
Just
heart at least.
because- No, I gotta go with my head here. But if Alistair Overeem wins, I'll be very, very happy. But I don't see it happening. Junior Dos Santos, yes, he didn't look good against Stipe, but Stipe is one of the best right now. He's very good. Will we ever see the same Junior Dos Santos since getting destroyed by Kane twice after obviously knocking him out? No, but does that matter when he's fighting Alistair Overeem when, like Daniel pointed out, the best one-punch knockout artist in MMA versus the worst chin in MMA? I can't see Alistair Overeem lasting 15 minutes, which hurts to say, but I gotta go with the truth, and that is Junior Dos Santos by knockout, and then I'll fall into a depression for about an hour. All right, moving on. Main event, Rafael dos Anjos, the lightweight champion, defending his title for the first time against Donald Cerrone. Very, very exciting rematch. These two fought in 2013 at the end of the year, with RDA picking up a decision. Daniel, however, both these guys have improved since then. They're completely different, but Daniel, are you going to the champ here, or will Cowboy Cerrone become the new UFC champion?
And still, I got RDA all day, man. I mean, look, I know that Cowboy is the fan favorite. We all love Cowboy. I know it's the trendy underdog pick because it's the last event of the year and everyone wants to see Cowboy fight. Yeah, Cowboy win the title. I mean, it's the last fight of the year. I mean, but listen, the styles, it's just a really bad style matchup for him. Cowboy needs his distance, and what does RDA like to do? He likes to pressure you, and RDA's pressure is something that you cannot replicate in the gym. I mean, I was talking to Benny Dariush on Half the Battle, and he went 3 rounds with Michael Johnson. We all know Michael Johnson has really good pressure. I asked him what RDA's pressure was like compared to Michael Johnson, and he said he made Michael Johnson look like an amateur. So I think that RDA, it's going to be pretty easy here. I think he's going to do his thing, pressure him. If he wants to knock him out, he's going to knock him out. If he wants to take him down, he's going to take him down. Much respect to the Cowboy. He will continue to go on and, knock out a bunch of guys and submit a bunch of guys, win a bunch of post-fight awards, but he's not going to win the big one this time.
Jeremy, are you going with Donald Cowboy Cerrone to become the new UFC lightweight champion, or will RDA defend for the first time successfully?
I think it's all going to I don't have a pick as of right now. I think it's going to depend on what RDA looks like on Friday afternoon when we see him at the weigh-ins, because if this whole IV thing comes into play, or anything like that, the drug scene and all that stuff, if any of that stuff comes into play, I think we might be seeing a different RDA on Friday afternoon at the weigh-ins. So it's going to come down to that for me. As of right now, I am picking the champ to retain his title, but boy, would I love to see the Cowboy take this one, just so we get to see Conor McGregor, Cowboy Cerrone.
All right, Paulo, are you going with RDA here to retain, or will Donald Cerrone gain the lightweight championship?
I gotta echo what Daniel and Jeremy said. If RDA gets past the whole IV thing, if he doesn't get if he rehydrates properly, because Benny Dariush was on Ariel Helwani's show a couple months ago, and he said that RDA was 200 pounds. So I don't know if it's exaggerating, but dude, if you're 200 pounds, man, that's serious, man. But that was months ago, so RDA is probably fine now. But yeah, if he's the RDA who fought Pettis, he's gonna roll through Cerrone. I think Pettis is like a superior version of Cerrone, and if RDA did that to Pettis, he's gonna do worse to Cowboy. Although when they fought previously, Cowboy was starting to like heat up in the third round. I mean, he won the third round from RDA when RDA was starting to like slow down. Although I think RDA was probably just cruising. He was just doing the whole Aldo thing. So, but no, this is a championship fight, totally entirely different stakes here. I think RDA is gonna win.
Yeah, I got to go with RDA here as well. I do think it'll be a close fight though. But I got to go with the Brazilian here to retain his championship. I think he's better everywhere pretty much. On the feet, I think he is a bit better on the ground. Cerrone is very underrated on the ground, especially off his back. But RDA could definitely grind him out if it goes there. But ultimately, I think it'll be more of a stand-up war. I don't know if it'll be a fight of the year type of thing, even fight of the night. But I think it'll be an exciting fight. I think we're in for a treat. It'll be a lot different than their first matchup, but I gotta side with RDA to get the nod. Daniel, anything else you want to talk about for UFC on Fox 17? Any other fights we missed? Anything else, Daniel?
Well, I mean, firstly, I just want to say that it's been an incredible year. This is the last UFC event of the year, and what a year it's been, man. I mean, we have 7 new champions in 2015. Conor McGregor, he did it finally. And, man, here's to the future, guys. 2016 is going to be incredible.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about before we get to our counter move teams and whatnot and wrap this up. How do you guys see like the UFC doing business-wise? What fights do you think we'll see in next year, especially early on? Obviously, January is booked, February is starting to fill up, but UFC 200 takes place in 2016. 2015 has been such a big year for the UFC though, with Conor McGregor, with the big fight pay-per-view wise against Chad Mendes. I'm sure 194 will do over 1 million once that's released. And then Ronda Rousey got a few pay-per-views in that were right around 900,000 or so. So big year for the UFC. Daniel, anyone who wants to pitch in, do you think the year 2016 will be bigger, the same, worse? Where do you think the UFC will be next year?
Well, it's not going to be worse. I mean, the UFC grows every single year. The return of John Jones is happening in 2016. The year starting off with Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. I mean, and then we're going to have Conor McGregor defending his title. He's going to potentially be a two-way champ. I mean, I think that obviously the sport's going to keep evolving. We're going to see these next-generation athletes come along, and I can't wait to see.
Jeremy, anything else to add? Do you think 2016 with obviously, like Daniel mentioned, John Jones' return, most likely against Cormier, and I know April is the targeted date, nothing's official, but it looks like it's going to be a big year.
2016 could be a huge year, not just with the fact that John Jones could be returning, but the fact that New York State could be on the table, man. New York City, there could be a UFC in Madison Square freaking Gardens, dude. That is huge for the UFC.
Yeah, I agree. Hope it happens, but I'm not confident. Paulo, anything else to add to what Jeremy or Daniel said?
Well, are we going to see 7 new champions again next year? Because it's going to be tough to beat this year, man. 7 new champions, man, including Ronda Rousey, Chris Weidman, and Jose Aldo, all losing. Those are like 4 of the top 4. Those are like 3 of the top 4 pound-for-pound fighters right there. And John Jones lost his belt too. I mean, he didn't lose, but he like lost his belt. So, no, I'm just excited to see the return of John Jones among other. I think next year's going to be the year of the rematch, man. Conor's year and the year of the rematch.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely going to be a big year with John Jones returning, with Conor McGregor as the featherweight champion, with the rematch between Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey, which I don't think anyone mentioned. Although, now I'm not sure when that's going to happen, because I just read in an article today that Ronda Rousey is supposedly filming 2 movies before she fights again. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. But like I hope they don't keep Holly Holm on the sidelines for too long, simply to wait for Rousey, because I know Holm didn't take a ton of damage. I'm sure she can get back in there relatively soon. Can Ronda Rousey? I'm not too sure. But yeah, that does it for 2015 for UFC on Fox 17. Daniel, if you have your camera move team up, give us your 5 fighters on your camera move team.
I got Junior Cigano to be the 13th on paper man to KO the Glass Jaw of Alistair Overeem. And then I also got Rafael Dos Anjos, I got Miles Jury, Josh Saman, and CB Dalloway.
Paulo, who are your 5 fighters on your camera move team?
So I got JDS, Junior Dos Santos. I've got the champion, Rafael Dos Anjos, because it's a 5-rounder and just going to get a lot of points down there. I got Josh Saman. I got Nate Diaz, the real Nate the Great Diaz, and CB Dalloway. And I mean, hold on. Let me just say, who made this price for Conor was Wise, Nate Marquardt, 5,300, and CB Dalloway, 4,300. Someone kind of messed up down there.
Yeah, that really makes no sense whatsoever. But yeah, I'm probably gonna change my counter move team, but because it was a bit tough this time around. But right now I have RDA, Tamden McCrory, Michael Johnson, Cole Miller, and Kamaru Usman, who you may not know, he won Tough 21, which really means not a heck of a lot anymore. But those are my 5 fighters. I'm looking at putting Dalloway in, replacing him with someone. Charles Oliveira, another good option. But yeah, overall, it's a great card. Oh, and I should mention, I just couldn't come and put Dos Santos in my team. I just couldn't do it. That would have been too rough. Even
put Overeem
if it was 100 points.
Put Overeem in your team, Nick. Come on.
I think that's a bit.
Follow your heart, Nick.
Do that. Yeah,
what happens if Overeem? What happens if Overeem pulls the improbable and knocks out JDS? And now you're gonna feel bad about yourself because you're like, I could have been the only guy who said Overeem was gonna do it. Instead, you're like, you went with the crowd and be like, yeah, JDS.
I pick underdogs way too much. I'm not going with. Like, yeah, he's my favorite fighter. He always has been, but I can't go with a guy with probably the worst chin in MMA. So, but that would be really cool to see him win.
I still would have picked BJ Penn over Frankie Edgar in the 3rd time, just because he's my favorite fighter. No, I wouldn't, but I still would have said it publicly.
4th time.
The 4th time. I picked BJ Penn's ghost against Frankie Edgar.
Yeah. All right, that does it. UFC on Fox 17 goes down from Orlando, Florida this weekend on December 19th, I believe. Great card all around. It's on Big Fox, so watch it. It's fairly early this time. Obviously, most main cards start at around 10 p.m. Eastern time. 2 hours earlier this time, so it'll be nice watching some prelims in the afternoon and then watching the main card right around 7 where I am. But all right, thanks to you guys for coming on. Daniel, anything you want to plug, your website, your bets, your social media, anything you got coming up, now's your time.
Yeah, obviously, it's good to talk to you guys as always. Jeremy, you asked me to come on MMA Sucker Radio. I asked you to come on Half the Battle, so we got to work that out soon. And for everyone watching, follow me at Best Fight Picks. Go to bestfightpicks.com, and my show Half the Battle. Subscribe on iTunes. Give me a 5-star review, and I'm just interviewing the most exciting fighters in the game, and that's it.
All right, Paulo, you just kicked off your podcast a couple weeks back. So you got that. You got your writing. Where can we find your writing? Where can we find you on social media? And anything else you got coming up?
So you can find me on social media. Like my tag is like down there. So at GoPauloMMA. I usually tweet out my articles for Sportsnet at Today's Knockout. And yeah, I just released a podcast. I mean, we're just scheduling guests right now, but obviously I'm going to ask 3 of you to come on. Maybe not all 3 of you at the same time, or who knows. It's going to be fun. But yeah, what our podcast is doing is we're trying to sort of cover sort of beyond just the fighting, the breakdown. People do the breakdowns, like, the fights, what happened and stuff. And, that's all great and stuff, but we sort of want to, like, focus on other things. Like Mark Hunt's book just came out, so we talked about that. We're talking about Whip to Warrior, which is a fitness program where, average Joes like me and whoever else can sign up and do the MMA training and see what it's like. And we had Sophia Whitaker, Robert Whitaker's wife, on there talking about what is this like to be, a relative or a close person, what goes through their head, how she helps his training and stuff like that. That's what we're trying to cover with MMA Side Dish. You can find that at MMA Side Dish. and we're on our 3rd episode. We're tweeting it out right now, so give it a listen, guys, and subscribe on iTunes and SoundCloud.
I gotta ask, what was it like having Whitaker's wife on the show? Because that's not something you see too often, having the wife or husband, obviously, of like a UFC fighter. That's kind of cool.
She was really fun, actually. She's very bubbly. She was very honest and open. Although, if you're talking to someone's wife, it kind of feels like when you're talking to her that Robert Whitaker's on the phone beside her. So you really gotta, you gotta you gotta be nice and stuff like that. So, I mean, she's a really cool girl, man. She's a cool girl. And if I had that interview before UFC 193, I would have put so much money on Robert Whitaker, because you sort of just see how he's like as a person and all that stuff, and how he's so much better now because he's fighting in New Zealand and he's not away from his family. That's a huge part. In Australia.
All right, you can check out my website, mmajunior.co, for all your MMA news, coverage for this week's fights and whatnot. Follow me on Twitter at NickUFC. You can find my work also at bloodyelbow.com and MMAsucker.com. And check out my weekly podcast at MMA Junior Radio. I kind of host that with John King. We're kind of in some works. We're in the works with some things right there. But this past week we had Chris Toplak on, former host of Talking Combat. We're talking the end of his show. He just quit, or I guess not quit, but he ended his podcast Talking Combat, which is hosted on MMA Soccer. I'm just giving Soccer a bunch of shoutouts here, and Jeremy will give a few more in a second. but yeah, so we had him on, and we had Tim Hague on the show, UFC veteran, who I know he'll probably get another shoutout in a second. I think Jeremy is having him on next week, I believe, maybe this week, I'm not sure. But yeah, he's the unified MMA heavyweight champion. He defends his belt against Tony Lopez this weekend at Unified MMA 25. I think that's about it. My podcast, my Twitter, my work. Yeah, Jeremy, I forgot about you. Where can you find you on Twitter? Yeah, no problem. Where can we find you on Twitter, and what you got coming up?
Pretty straightforward. Check me out on Twitter at Jeremy Brand 604. Follow MMA Sucker as well at MMA Sucker, Facebook, Twitter at MMA Sucker. You know how it goes. This week's podcast, Sucker Radio, we've got, as you said, I talked about it, Tim Hague fights on Friday night against Tony Lopez. My buddy Dave Boyce, he's the designer of RDS clothing. He comes on to chat a little bit about mixed martial arts. And kicking off my show, I got a guy named Gary Manga. You guys might not know who he is, but he's a local cat. He's from Vancouver. But he just signed with Paradigm MMA, the management team. And he was in all the videos with Conor McGregor, the one where Conor McGregor did the DMX when he was rapping at his after party and shit. Gary Mangat was the guy that was right beside him at that party. So I have him on to talk about that and just signing with Paradigm, because that's huge. It's a big management company. So I've got him on the show as well. So yeah, just check out MMAsucker.com for everything that we do.
I do want to mention I was supposed to have Tim Elliott and Tyler Bowe on this week's episode of MMA Junior Radio. Obviously, I wasn't able to air the Elliott interview as his fight this Friday was canceled. The whole Titan FC 36 event was canceled. And the Tyler Bowe interview, the audio messed up, so that's not on as well. But great show still with Chris Toplak and Tim Hague. Thanks to you guys. I know Daniel's already gone. Jeremy, thanks for coming on. Paulo, as always, thanks. And with that, enjoy the fights.